seen and presentations done by Emer and Spence in an excellent way, and I introduced already the 4 breakout sessions and the rapporteur teams or rapporteurs of the 4 breakout sessions, and I think these are important topics we have to discuss, so you can now work in your breakout sessions, and please enter the room as now you have been agreed to, and then we will come back with the reports of the rapporteurs then after these breakout sessions, and have then time to wrap up from the 4 breakout groups, and then 30 minutes for deeper discussion or questions which might be raised. So thank you very much, and a lot of success in your breakouts.
Good afternoon. This is
Good afternoon.
Hello. I'm waiting for my dear colleague Helena to join. Hello, Helena.
Hello, I am here, but not able to join with the video. I don't know why.
I can see you on the video and I can hear you.
You can see me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Good. So we have 6 participants, I see here.
Yes, and I don't know if we have to wait for more participants to join, but since the total number was about 30, 40, it might be divided into the 4 sessions, so maybe we can start.
Yes.
Can we maybe ask the organizers until when do we have time for this session? Because of course we are running a little bit behind schedule. So if we start at 3:30, I assume we have time until 4:10, isn't it? 40 minutes.
Hello, Violeta. This is Dina speaking. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes, indeed. Yeah, you have about 15 minutes. So if you can pause at about 3 p.m. in Portugal, it will be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. So it means that we have 30 minutes altogether, so 15 for each of the 2 regulations. Thank you, Dina. Thank you for helping.
Okay, good. So let us start, Violeta?
Yes, please.
Yeah?
Let's start.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to say hello to everyone and to welcome you to this breakout session 1. Of course, I would like to thank the organization for the invitation to be here today. And I will share a small presentation here with you. Let us see if it works. It doesn't work. I am trying to share the screen. I knew that this was going to happen. Yes.
It will work.
Why? But yeah. Okay.
The green share screen icon, which is underneath.
Yes, I'm clicking on it.
Yes.
But nothing happens. Okay.
Maybe our moderators can help us, the technical support.
Okay, I think I got it. I got it. Are you seeing the?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, wonderful. So, as I said, this session is a bit ambitious for the time we have. In fact, this topic is very, very huge, and I will start by setting the scene for the pediatric regulation, and then Violeta will proceed with the orphan. We will spend 10 minutes with this introduction, and then we will have 40 minutes for the discussion. And of course, this will be the most important part of the session. You know quite well that many years have elapsed since the EU introduced these two regulations. And in fact, the objectives of the two regulations, they partially overlap. And this is because most rare diseases may appear already within the pediatric age range. And on the other hand, many diseases that affect only children are rare diseases. I would like to mention here the 5-year report to the European Commission prepared by the Pediatric Committee at the EMA. And I think it provided at that time a very important reflection on the experience gained with the first 5 years, and a few areas were identified for improvement. Another landmark was the 10-year report. This report from the Commission to the European Parliament and the Council recognized that there had been an increase in medicines for children in many therapeutic areas. But however, that little progress has been made in diseases that only affect children, or where the disease shows biological differences between adults and children. And in fact, the pediatric regulation has fostered the development and availability of medicines for children. And of course, we are all aware that member states alone, they could not have achieved this result. This because of the small number of patients concerned, and also because of the fragmentation of the market. But however, we are also aware that we were not able to sufficiently manage to support development in those areas where the needs are higher. I think that I would like to ask everybody to switch off to mute their microphones, because there is a background noise. So please be sure that everybody is muted. Thank you very much. It's much better now. Okay, so this was recognized by the Parliament in its 2016 resolution, and the Commission was called to consider a revision of the regulation. And then we come to this very important and more recent outcomes, and this is the joint evaluation of both regulations. This was published in last August, and the joint evaluation identified that there was an insufficient development in areas of greatest unmet medical needs. It also identified that availability and accessibility varies a lot across member states. Also, that scientific and technological developments cannot be fully exploited, and that certain procedures are inefficient and quite burdensome. I would like to focus only on points 1 and 3 by now. As regards point 1, in fact, as I have already mentioned, development of medicines for children has not addressed sufficiently the highest unmet needs of children. And I could share here with you my concerns as regards neonatology and mental health. These are, in fact, areas, neglected areas, I would say. Then we have this problem of the one-size-fits-all incentives and rewards, which do not always stimulate developments in areas of unmet needs. And we could mention the 6 months SPC extension that can be granted after the completion of pediatric clinical studies, but has not been able to incentivize research and development in diseases that affect only children, or in areas where the unmet therapeutic needs for children are higher. If we now focus on the third item point here on the slide, we can reflect that, in fact, current legal definitions are linked directly to the concept of disease. And for me, this is a very, very problematic way of directing this, because doing so, advancements in science, such as biomarkers and personalized medicine, these kind of approaches cannot always be used to the benefit of children if we remain only focused on this concept of disease. And also, I would say, the provisions on medicine for children, they may exclude from the obligation to conduct clinical studies in children certain medicines developed for adults and which, in view of their mechanism of actions, may be promising for the treatment of certain diseases in children which are unrelated to the original adult disease. And an example is what happens in oncology. Anti-cancer medicines, pediatric anti-cancer medicines, they suffer from this. And I would say that this is a major issue, and that in fact this is something that we propose to discuss with all of you. So this EC joint evaluation recognized that the regulation on medicine for children increased the number of clinical trials in children and consequently the development of new medicines for them. It was able to reduce the off-label use of medicines for adults in children and favored the creation of a pediatric research environment in Europe. But nevertheless, and this is similar to what happened with the orphans, has not adequately managed to support development in areas where the need for medicine is highest. So products tend to be developed in certain more profitable therapeutic areas for which the number of available treatments is increasing. And this is the problem. And therefore, we have, I would say, in order to just to summarize, three big challenges. One, and these are challenges, of course, that we should overcome with the revision of the regulation. Till now, the regulation for medicine obliges companies to test new medicines in children, but has no dedicated instrument to direct development in areas relevant for children. Moreover, the development of new medicine for children remains mainly driven by adults' needs. And this is something that has to be changed. And the result of this, it does not necessarily address the greatest therapeutic needs of children, such as treatments for children's cancers and for newborns, as I have already mentioned. For medicines for children, the cost of conducting clinical studies in children can be compensated by extending the patent with the SPC, and this reward is only partially fulfilling its role in our view. It has not shown to be effective in stimulating the development of medicines whose development for adults is not attractive at all. So, moreover, obtaining this reward may be quite complex, as companies have to request it individually at the various national patent offices. And this is also something that we have to facilitate. We have to make this process less bureaucratic, in my view. So we have now here a summary of the modifications proposed to the current system of rewards. Here on option 1, the proposal is that the 6 months SPC extension will remain the main reward provided by the legislation, but a possibility to link this reward to a timely completion of a PIP, as well as to the placing on the market in most, or at the best would be all member states. This will be assessed. So this is option 1. Option 2 is similar to the previous one, but only relates to medicines addressing unmet needs for children. Then we have option 3, and this is this option builds on options 1 with the 6 months SPC extensions as the main reward. But for products addressing unmet needs for children, a novel reward would complement or replace the SPC extension. And this is the novelty. And then option 4, finally, no extension of the SPC would be granted. And instead, a novel reward, as described in option 3, would be granted to medicines addressing unmet needs for children. And in fact, I think that this would selectively boost medicine's development in such areas, and it would allow earlier generic entry on the market for products not fulfilling an unmet need for children, and thereby increasing their accessibility. So we will also discuss this altogether. So just to finalize, in fact, we consider that these combinations of options might be perhaps something that we are going to discuss, because there is a great potential for combinations, and we don't need to look at this for options as individual ones. We have to further explore synergies, overlaps, and common solutions for both areas of rare and children's disease, in my view. We need an holistic reflection on the pharmaceutical sector also, and the pharmaceutical sector is, of course, willing to do that. And finally, I would say that from my perspective as a PTCO member, I would like very much to see an improvement in the identification and categorization of unmet medical needs. Okay, so I give you the word, Violeta.
Thank you very much, Helena. I will try to share my screen now. I didn't want to interrupt. I saw in the chat a request from participants to do this in a different mode. Let me see. Your browser is preventing access to your share screen. Why? No, this is very strange. Can our colleagues please help here, because I have a message. Your browser is preventing access to your share screen. And if there is such a technical problem, Helena, can I ask you to share my presentation? I think you have it.
Yes, but I think that you can solve the problem by your own. I had the same problem. You have, if you click on, you have a full screen on the left, then you have window, and then you have Chrome separator, I think. So just click on the one on the right hand side. On top of your screen, on the top, you see it?
No.
Yes. No?
No.
No. So I can try
this, but I think it is. If you can please put up the presentation, that will maybe be easier than trying to find out. Because with all this logging in and out from the sessions, I'm not sure which browser is now connected.
Okay, so I'll try.
Thank you very much.
To do it by my side, from my side.
Yes. And while we are waiting, let's see.
Here it is.
And if you can put it in presentation mode, please, then people can maybe see the stuff better. Full screen mode.
I put it in full screen. I have already put it in full screen.
Okay. There is another icon underneath, which is for presentation mode, but I hope that participants can see the slides. Now, considering time, I will go very quickly through the presentation, because many of the messages which you will see in my presentation have. And if you can please go to the next slide, it is about the revision of the orphan regulation. Dear Helena, can you change the slide, please?
I have changed it.
Oh, that means
I have already changed it.
I think that you need to put the PowerPoint presentation into presentation mode. Okay, Elena?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm really sorry for this, but there is either a delay on my side or something else, but I can only see the title slide. Dear Dina, can you please help us? What do you see? Do you see the next slide already?
Yes, yes, I see the title slide, the first slide, but without being in presentation mode. So if Elena is now sharing the screen, right? So if Elena could put the PowerPoint in presentation mode. Can you do it, Elena, please?
Yes, but I have already put it in presentation mode, and I'm seeing it on my screen like that. I don't know.
They are informing me that possibly your screen is frozen. So could you please stop sharing the screen and then begin sharing again, please? Yeah, and now again, please, Elena.
Okay. And now, what do you want me to do?
To start sharing a presentation from Violeta, please.
But you want me to do it, or Violeta would do it?
No, since Violeta was unable to do it, yeah, if you can do it, Elena, it would be great. Thank you.
This is really unfortunate because yesterday when we were trying out the system, everything was working perfectly. And for some reason today, there is this difficulty with sharing the screen. Okay, here it is. Thank you very much. So now we are on slide 2.
Okay, try to put in presentation mode, please, Elena.
Sorry?
Try to put it in presentation mode, please.
Like this?
No, the next one to the right.
Yes, but I put it on presentation mode. This is on presentation mode in my screen.
Okay, so let's try to go through it as it is.
Let's try to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will not be able to.
And Elena.
It's better, yes.
You are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, this slide is just a summary of what are the problems which were identified when there was an evaluation of the orphan regulation and the experience that we had in the last 20 years. And as you can see, I have highlighted one of them, which is directly related to what this conference is mainly about, and it is about the availability and accessibility, which is really variable among member states. We all know, we recognize the problem. And since there is no link between the incentives which are in the current provision and placing a product to the market, what happens in the end is that patients in only a few member states actually have access to medicines for patients with a rare condition. So there is apparently something which can be changed there. And if you move to the next slide, it is just to highlight that, of course, a very important discussion which is ongoing and which is related to potential revisions of of the regulation is how to recognize where is the need to incentivize, where is the high unmet medical need. And we are discussing this in two aspects. First, which are the diseases which are really serious, debilitating or fatal, and then whether there is any treatment for those conditions or not. When there isn't, apparently there is a very high unmet medical need. When there is, it depends what kind of treatment is available there, whether it's just symptomatic or is it really a game changer? Is it really changing the life expectancy of patients and the quality of life? But if we move more into the next slide. Okay, so these are the as formulated by the European Commission, the objectives of the revision. As you can see again, we are talking about improving the availability and the timely access. And there we have in the next slides a summary of the 4 different scenarios which will be tested now in this impact assessment. And I will not read the text, but I will just try to highlight what are the different elements which are being discussed. So in this first scenario, the criteria for prevalence will remain the same, the threshold will remain the same, but then there will be some variation in the market exclusivity. How long that will be can also be coupled to how innovative drug development is or how high the unmet medical need is. And then it can also be extended. And one of the conditions which is discussed is how to couple this extension to certain conditions. For instance, that it will come back in one of the other options. So if you move to the next slide, you will see a summary of option 2, where there will be variation in the threshold for the prevalence, but also potentially using incidence for some rare oncological conditions. And this maybe is also one of the links to the pediatric regulation and to what I saw in the chat, mentioning that, of course, pediatric oncology is one of the areas which is in need of incentivizing. Now, option 3, which is on the next slide. Yes. Here, market exclusivity will remain a standard incentive, but in addition to that, there could be additional incentives for particular rare diseases and some new incentives. And finally, option 4. Next slide, please. Yes, in this scenario, there will be more variation according to the unmet medical need, and the market exclusivity can be one of the incentives, but it can also be combined with some others. And I think one of the interesting discussions which is ongoing is about how can the extension of the incentives, in this case the market exclusivity probably, with guarantee that a product will be placed on the market in most, if not all, member states of the European Union. So this is maybe something which we can discuss today. And this brings me to the last 2 slides which I have in the presentation. And they are summarizing the questions which Helena and myself have formulated to start the discussion. And it is a bit unfortunate that we spend too much time with technical problems, but I hope that we will get some responses to the questions. So here I have 3 questions which are related to the orphan legislation. One is which of the 4 scenarios could be the preferred one and why? I would be very happy to hear some opinions on that. The other one is whether some novel incentives can have an impact on addressing the high unmet medical need, and if the variable duration can be also an interesting option. And finally, how indeed to couple some post-marketing obligations to higher incentives. But on the next slide, we have the questions about the pediatric regulation, and I will, with this, give back the floor to Helena to start in the next
Thank you.
5 minutes with discussing these two questions, and then we come back to the orphans. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Violetta. And by the way, let me just share with the group we have here today that it has been a real pleasure to work with you, because we have prepared this together, and it was a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So. So I have two questions, but I think that we could spend the whole afternoon here discussing them. So unfortunately, we are quite short in time. And the first one regards the four options. The four options, both of us have presented for the modifications to the current system of rewards, and in my view, I think that this is a major discussion we should have, and I'm very curious. Which one do you consider best tackles the problems linked to the unmet medical needs and unequal access to medicines for children? And of course, that, as I said, perhaps it's not just an issue of choosing one of them, because perhaps there are possible combinations across them, but I would like to hear from you on this. Then the second question has to do with something that, as a petition member, really concerns me, and this is the need for an urgent revision of the conditions for granting exemptions from the obligation to study new medicines in children, in order to ensure that products that could be beneficial for children due to their mechanism of action for diseases different from those in adults are effectively tested for them. This is, I think, a crucial issue in order we can move forward. So I would like to hear your views on how this advice that usually currently we provide should be converted into an obligation, and what kind of incentives could be applicable here. Thank you. So if there are people who want to start, please feel free.
We have an option to raise a hand, and since the group is not so big, maybe this is easier. And I was trying to check whether in the chat there are some comments on this, but since we can see the comments on all four breakout sessions, it is a little bit...
No comments, Violetta, so far.
No. Thank you, Dina. You're moderator A, I realized, and you're the moderator of our session.
So what happened?
We are waiting for hands to be raised from people in the audience, and in the chat there are comments. Of course, also in the other sessions I see that there is some overlap in what we are discussing here, but there is no specific comment in the chat regarding our session so far.
Okay.
So it is a little bit difficult, of course, to give an opinion on this in a few minutes today. But maybe, Helena, because it is something which is on the PDCO agenda all the time, what are the ideas in the pediatric committee on how to overcome this problem of having medicines with a mechanism of action which is applicable to other conditions? Do you have already some ideas internally from the committee? Maybe this is a good starting point.
Yes, it is. I would say that quite often at the PDCO, a waiver is granted for a specific medicine developed for adults on the grounds of non-occurrence of the disease in children. But we are also, we grant the waiver, but we are always discussing this need for be very clear in the minutes and after the opinion that the mechanism of action might be promising for the treatment of other diseases in children which are unrelated to the original adult disease, which is the aim of that submission. And of course, we feel a bit frustrated because we try to push the company in our interactions with them to further explore this possibility, but we cannot do more than that because we cannot force them, of course. So I think that it would be very important to find a way in the legislation to be able to overcome this, which is really a very important limitation for the development of new medicines for children and also related to this identification of the unmet medical needs. I think that this, for me, and based on my daily work at the PDCO, I think that this is a real priority. However, I think that there are other issues that matter here, and one of them is, of course, and I think this is right now quite pressing, the increasing influence of external factors on the legislation. And I think that when I mentioned the need for this holistic reflection, I was exactly thinking about this because problem that related to member states, because as we know, pricing and reimbursement of medicines and also the corporate taxation it depends on member states. So on the other hand, we have the companies, so they have their strategic decisions, and we cannot do much on that. Of course, that we can provide incentives, and because it's with the incentives that things at this level are going, I think, to change. Then we have this interplay with the supplementary protection certificate. This is an old mechanism. It was created in, as far as I remember, in 1992, and in fact, it affects the efficiency of the regulation on medicines for children. Currently, it is undergoing an evaluation, so I am very much excited to see the results of this evaluation. And lastly, we have to consider I think the impact on the COVID-19 pandemics on the development and accessibility of medicines for children. because of course it has been impacting somehow this development. So this is from my side.
Thank you very much, Helena. I saw a proposal or a comment in the chat from Olga Kojaeva about a segmented approach with part delivered on completion of an interim deliverable would be a significant advance, while the remainder would be given on completion of the full pediatric investigation plan. In other words, to give the incentives in proportion to what has been delivered. That's how I read it and understand it. But please, if someone wants to comment, please raise your hand and comment. Okay. No.
From my side, I think that it is a great idea and quite fair, because it would push the companies to deliver more in order to get more incentives.
Okay, so if I can take the remaining 3 minutes of our session before we have to go back and join. I see also a comment from Sergio Napolitano. What can be done to stimulate investments in follow-on generic biosimilar orphan medicines so to create immediate competition and protection expires? That's a good question. How to stimulate generics and biosimilars? And I'm afraid I don't have the answer, but it would be good to hear maybe some ideas from the audience. Now, the questions which I had for the audience were again about the 4 scenarios, but that might be a very long discussion. So maybe it's linked to what was the comment on the pediatric. The same concept or a similar one is also discussed for the orphans, whether a shorter initial market exclusivity, which can be extended, is a different option than the one that we have now, where one size fits all. So any orphan drug at time of marketing maintains the orphan status and then obtains 10-year market exclusivity. So what if this is shortened, but then it can be extended based on the performance? And the question is, what kind of parameters would we as a society want to see or want to demand from pharmaceutical companies in order to get these additional incentives? And of course, it has to be something which is realistic from all participating stakeholders. So on one hand, it has to be attractive for companies to go down that road, and it also has to be also leading to earlier availability and access of drugs in the member states. So I don't know if someone wants to comment on this. I see no other hands raised and no other comments, which doesn't mean that we have solved the problems that we have today. It only shows that the time was probably not enough to have a free discussion. We will have to find out how to debrief back into the plenary session afterwards from what we have been discussing here. But before we stop, I want to ask our dear coordinators, I think Dina, you're moderator in our session, do we have any additional minutes or do we have to stop now?
You have 2 additional minutes, Violeta. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So we have 2 bonus minutes. And maybe another question again to the audience would be, are there any ideas how to great incentives based on performance. What would be the performance criteria? Would it be the type of drug? Would it be the disease as such and the degree of unmet medical need? Or would it be the rarity, for instance? Because there also, I have heard comments in different sessions where I have been that the ultra rare diseases probably would deserve a little bit more incentives, because otherwise there would never be development. This is not always probably true, but I just wanted to maybe, you know, put this question on the table and see if there are some immediate reactions from the audience. We have a very quiet audience today, but I can see that something is happening in the chat. Thank you, Olga. Align the regulations with science and unmet need of children. Implement an approach to pediatric medicine development driven by mechanism of drug action, disease biology, and patient needs. These include suppression of Article 11b of the pediatric regulation. Thank you for this comment. Maybe, Helena, you have to help me here because I'm not familiar with Article 11b of the pediatric regulation, but I'm sure that you are. So maybe this will be a clarification to understand the comment even better.
I have to check it
Okay.
because by the number. Okay.
I will take a note.
Okay. So, so it says this.
Yes. We maybe can try to find out in the 10 minutes that we have before we report back. But if,
yes,
Olga, if you are in the audience, can you please speak? Because that is much easier than reading.
It is about the need to introduce a requirement for new medicinal products and for authorized medicinal products covered by a patent or a supplementary protection certificate to present either the results of studies in the pediatric population in accordance with an agreed pediatric investigation plan or proof of having obtained a waiver or deferral at the time of filling a marketing authorization application. I think that, for instance, for ultra-rare diseases, that we should accelerate this process. I was thinking about the PRIME strategy, and so something similar to that should be put in action for this in order to overcome all the bureaucratic process that usually takes place. So I would say that some steps could perhaps be accelerated, and of course for that there is need of consensus and of many different kind of people working together in order to accelerate this. That's what comes to my mind right now.
Thank you very much. I was checking the chat and I can see that we have a few more additional comments, but unfortunately maybe it is time to close, and I will copy them so that we will try to summarize them when we are reporting back. And I think this will be maybe also an opportunity to bring back those proposals and questions when we have the additional Q&A session with all participants, which is right after this one. So with this, maybe it's time to say thank you to all participants who joined this breakout session. And I believe the way to do this now is to disconnect and then connect again, or we will be automatically brought back in the big meeting. Can you please confirm what are we supposed to do?
Dear Julieta, please remain where you are and you will be redirected, okay? Thank you so much for a wonderful section. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we wait patiently to be brought in the other room.
So please give me a sign from the technicians when all participants are back in the main room. So, thank you very much. I heard from the technicians that everybody is back in the main room, so we will go forward with the results of the breakout sessions, and we will start with breakout session 1. And I would ask Helena and Violeta to wrap up what you have discussed and what are the key outcomes of your session. So please go ahead. Helena or Violeta, are you able to unmute? And
Now I can.
okay, great.
Now I'm unmuted.
Hi, Violeta.
Hello, Carol.
So please go ahead with your wrap up.
So, as you know, the topic of our session was how can we improve access to medicines in special populations, and what changes in the two regulations could potentially lead to an improvement in access. And we had very short presentations of the 4 different scenarios which are discussed and which are now being tested, both for the pediatric and for the orphan regulation. And there are some differences. What are the elements which are in these scenarios? And then the question to the audience was, what suggestions do you have in mind which can help in this perspective? Now, one of the problems, especially for the pediatric regulation, is that our colleagues at the pediatric committee very often have to give a waiver for a certain medicine which is developed in adults, and the waiver is given because the condition does not exist in children. But on the other hand, the mechanism of action of this drug is such that it can be used and applicable for other diseases in children. And the question is, how can something be changed in the regulation to, let's say, push a little bit in the direction of development of that drug in other conditions? It is an advice as it is now, and this is always mentioned in the minutes of PDCO, but there is a wish to incentivize this in a different way, which will lead in the end to drug development in some neglected areas. So this is one question to the audience, and there were some different suggestions coming. One would be what I read in the chat. I have to look at my notes now, is that there could be some additional incentives, or that there could be suppression of Article 11b, if I noted it correctly. But also that a suggestion which came, and which is maybe valid also for the rare conditions, not only for the pediatric, was that there might be some prioritization and tolerance to which is inherent with the clinical uncertainty which we have with ultra rare conditions and with very few children having a certain disease. In other words, that there could be a different way to incentivize this. Now, another discussion which we had, and which was again a question to the audience, more related to the orphan regulation, that was whether there are mechanisms which we could think of related to differential incentivization of drug development according to the level of the unmet medical need, and also to the performance during drug development, but also post-marketing of the certain medicinal product. What is meant here is that there could be ideas how to provide additional rewards and incentives if a medicinal product is not only developed and brought to the market, but is also in the end made available and accessible in more or all countries of the European Union, which is a problem very well recognized nowadays. So whether there could be some mechanisms how to correlate the extent of market exclusivity or any other incentives which are now under discussion, some new, probably different incentives, to the efforts which have been made and to the final result, which is the availability and access to medicines. Then I also saw something in the chat, which I'm not sure whether it was in reference to our session, but I think it was, and it is related to the fact that maybe HTAs are having a very complex assessment nowadays, could be a little bit simplified when it is about some neglected patient populations. And then for the ultra rare conditions, there was a comment that maybe there could be some additional schemes like similar to the PRIME, which can help and accelerate development. So maybe all this has been mentioned in many other conferences and meetings, but it was another opportunity to discuss some of these elements today. And I must say that if we had more time, I believe we would have had many more and interesting ideas, but unfortunately, we had a very limited amount of time. So this is a very small summary of what we discussed in session 1. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Violeta. I think I couldn't agree more that under the bottom line, so there are many ideas in the different breakout sessions, and I think for every panel it might be a starting point to follow up on these discussions. So in the interest of time, I see that we have only 15 minutes left. I would move on to breakout session 2, and I would ask Elizabeth to share then the results of the group, and with particular with your experience.
Thank you very much, Carol. So just to wrap up what we discussed, the breakout session 2 was around the unmet medical needs and medicines and medical devices research in view of patients and health system needs. So in this discussion, we were very much focusing on the definition of what we are meaning by the unmet medical needs. We see that there is this concept, this notion has been repeated, that has been set as an objective in many strategies, different strategies, to address the unmet medical needs, but there is a lack of really definition and understanding of the concepts. So as a first step moving forward, it would be good to have a more concrete definition on what we mean by this, and what in different strategies maybe it would be a different definition. So to be able to understand better what we mean would be helpful. We also need to keep pushing for meaningful patient engagement in the definition of those priorities and those needs, as the key is really to be able to, at the end of the day, meet the needs of the patients and provide address the needs that are identified and the priorities that are identified. And this could be done through a multi-stakeholder forum or public-private partnership. there was some suggestion here to look at the existing coalitions that exist and see if through those forums there would be a possibility to define better this concept. The different strategy that were mentioned were the IHI, HTA, the WHO, and the European, the Commission's definition. So it's really to bring all this together and see and understand if the definition is the same, so that we can also see how to implement that and how to address those. In terms of the multi-stakeholder forum, so it's also a better way to address better access to health innovation by developing concrete solution in a multi-stakeholder forum that would also help introduce new technologies into the healthcare systems. It was also mentioned that creating safeguards, like incentives, and also having a better governance models would allow equal partnership in the discussion and to define the strategies and to move forward. And that could be done both at European and national level. And there was a last question at the end that really was a strong question, asking if the concept of the unmet medical needs has helped to drive innovation, or on the contrary, has been used to justify lower evidence standards for the decision making. I believe that the concept of unmet medical needs is really important. It will help to make focused decisions and to make decisions that are and to drive innovation that would be meaningful and address concretely the needs to improve the quality of life of the patients. So this is what we need, but there is still ways to go, steps to move forward together to improve that understanding of what we are meaning.
Yeah, thanks Elizabeth for this concise review of your discussions, and I think it's exactly hit to the point that the definition is key and the governance in which circumstances we are moving. So César, repurposing of old medicines, this has been your group's topic. Please refer back to us.
Okay, sorry, I was mute and I couldn't do it. Thank you, Carl. I will be very brief. I think that in the discussion, it was very clear that definitely repurposing is an issue, and it's an issue that has at least two different angles to be seen. One is the things that usually do the pharmaceutical industry with the products that are still on patent or during the protection period, but that we have a niche of products that are all products out of patent, out of protection periods that can be seen as true orphans, as they are regularly used sometimes to treat a specific disease and patients, and sometimes because they may prove utility for a given disease, but that the industry do not have the incentives to develop. So there was a kind of consensus that we need to work on this segment of products that are all out of protection periods and that are not under a system of incentives that make that others, that the academia or the HTA or not-for-profit organizations can work on them. But in the end, and this is for these products specifically, we need to see how these products end in the marketing of authorization holders, because I think that everyone's agreed that the academia and the not-for-profit organizations are not willing to convert themselves in marketing authorization holders. So in the end, we need to find this regulatory route to make it possible, to make possible that we change, provided we have enough data to grant the new indication, but that we find the way to do it within the regulatory system. Also, there was consensus, or at least some interventions in the same direction, that saying that not only can be done in the regulatory system, that we can find this regulatory route, that we can speed up the process, that even we can find incentives like fee exemption for these products, but that in the end that there are other things in the pharmaceutical system, substitution policies, price and reimbursement policies, that in the end may have also a role in making it possible and making it affordable and workable. We have learned during this COVID-19 pandemic, and dexamethasone has been mentioned several times. And a couple of final comments. We need to find the flexibilities on the system that allow us to find the way to the repurposing without lowering the bars. So we want to maintain the same guarantees that we usually give to the patients and the healthcare professional, but without making it impossible. And also, and somehow related, we have been discussing, and probably this will be commented also by Nikolai and the other colleagues, that how this non-usual data sets coming from registries, real-world data, observational studies, and so on, can make a big contribution to this repurposing pathway, or on the other hand, it will be very difficult to use this data because they will not reach the regulatory acceptances that we need to give the guarantees that we usually need. But overall, I think that a very interesting issue that is going to play at least a role in the upcoming pharmaceutical strategy in Europe. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, everyone.
Yes. Thank you, Cesar, for this fine summary, particularly including the experience in the COVID-19 situation as well, regarding the corticosteroids or ibuprofen versus paracetamol and so on. So coming to the last breakout session, now it's Xavier and Nikolai on the use of big data and a European health data space. How could it be? So please, Xavier.
Yeah, yes, I can start, and then Nicola can complete. We addressed the question of availability and accessibility of the data from recommendation from the Joint Task Force on Big Data, and which provide as a first recommendation to ensure a secure and ethical data sharing culture. And it also promote the data discoverability. So we discussed a number of topics around these themes. And the first one that was probably the most discussed was to whom and by whom should data be shared. We shared a number of experience from regulators and from also academia, but the experience from BfArM was mentioned that there will be a research data center to be established where the data will be made available to academia, public institutions, and but not to pharmaceutical companies or the public in large. So although we recognize that ideally, the data should be made publicly available. Then this is difficult in practice, and the data may need to be shared at least between regulators, but also then with researchers. The question was also by whom should the data be made available, and we discussed the data that are being available with regulators, but also with companies. And what we said that it would be better to have a two-way streams of data sharing, that all the regulators could share data with companies and with others, but the industry is also sitting on a very large amount of data that are extremely valuable for the evaluation of benefits of and risk of medicines. But there are some obstacles for sharing this data from companies. But also we mentioned that at the level of academic institutions, there is also some culture of competition that may prevent sharing data or sharing data from research. We discussed also, because there was a question about what would be the action necessary at the EU level to promote the sharing of data across EU borders. And actually we came a bit to the conclusion that this is a question that may not be really appropriate anymore, because actually, there is now in the US, but also in Europe, the system of federated network of database that is being developed and increasingly used, which says that it is possible now with technological advances to have access to the data remotely, to make remote queries on databases, and to then export the results of this query. So there is no need to move the data anymore in order to get access to information that is provided. We discussed also the difficulty to have data, especially data from healthcare, routine healthcare, to have this data in real time. And in some countries, it may take months or even a year before the data that are collected in the electronic healthcare system can be made available for research or for regulators. So this is a difficulty that is certainly an important challenge in the future. We started a discussion, but we did not finish. We did not have the time to finish on data stewardship. So this is this system, this procedure that's being now promoted to ensure adequate and relevant expertise for data sharing, data ethics, and data protection within studies, and in order allowing them to follow the FAIR principles. So this is certainly an interesting ideas, and that we will need to follow, and that could provide them confidence and trust into the data that are being generated by industry or by regulators or by researchers. So I don't know, Nicola, if you would like to comment on this.
No, I think you covered it extremely well, Xavier, so thank you very much for that. I think we're also right on the dot out of time now. So I think you have covered everything. It was a lively discussion, a very good session. So back to you, Carl.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you pointed it out. We are out of time now, so it is now left to me to thank the presenters with the starting review, and then in the breakout sessions, I thank the rapporteurs, and I can agree to Nikolai, it has been a lively chat I have seen, and within the breakouts, so it's a starting point. And with that, I would like to thank Rui and his team and colleagues. As you see, you have hit the point here. You have chosen the right topics for the breakout sessions. There has been a big interest in these topics. So thanks a lot for allowing us this. And it was, I was happy to be a part of it, and it's been a great pleasure for me and all the participants. So many thanks to all of you, and wish you a good day in continuation. And now left for the short break before the panel 2 then is continued with Maria from the Spanish agency. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Bye.